Good evening. My name is Steve Barrett. I'm the Director of Public Works here in Brattleboro, and welcome everyone. I'm glad you came down. We're here to discuss. This is a public meeting to get input from you, the public, on our project for downtown improvements. Tonight we'll hear from Chrissy Legg, who's from Dufresne Group. They're the engineers for this project. And also we have Tim Calabrese from Good Earth Landscaping. He's involved in the project. Our Highway Utility Superintendent, Hannah O'Connor, is in the audience, and so is Gary King. He's our engineering. And Matt Mann's here also from Wyndham Regional. So this is an opportunity to get your input. We're happy to get this funding to do the improvements in downtown. What we deal with many times is there's a lot of maintenance issues, and also we have trips and falls in the downtown area. So it's not only a safety, it's an aesthetic issue. This project, mainly, it will be on the east side of Main Street, which will be on the river side. Some of the improvements that were done when we did the traffic lights and such also included the ADA ramps and some sections of sidewalk, mainly by the Brooks House, and there was some from the Candle Night, some small sections. We're going to try to keep the areas that were redone and not rip out what has newly been installed. There are some areas that there will also be a cleaning treatment that will be in place near one of the bulb outs that we're hoping will help match things up. So that's what I have. If people do speak, we'd like you to come up to the mic. The mic is so the listeners can hear at home. And with that, I'll introduce Chrissy Legg. She's the engineer from Dufresne Associates.
Thank you, Steve. So a quick overview on the project schedule and process. We are currently in the conceptual design phase. After this meeting, in the next week, these drawings will be submitted to the state for review. And once we get comments back from the state, then we'll go into our final design process. And all of this takes quite a while. So you won't expect to see construction until probably next spring. I know a lot of people are expecting to see something happen this fall, and it is unlikely that it will happen this fall, just due to the length of the process and the state reviews and the town reviews. So the project basically goes from the bridge down by Bridge Street and runs north along the east side of Main Street all the way to Walnut Street. We're going to be replacing sections of sidewalk, so the older sections of the sidewalk will be replaced. And I'll give everybody a chance afterwards, and some of you have already had a chance to take a look. But on here we can see where the sections of sidewalk that are going to be replaced are. They're all drawn out here. Basically, the sidewalk's going to be the same location, same width, same elevation, just new. In let's see, we're going to have all granite curbing, concrete sidewalk. In some areas, you may have basements in your buildings that extend underneath the sidewalks. You may have seen one of our engineers come by your building. We did some investigations a couple months ago, and we're looking for basements that stuck out underneath the sidewalks. Those basements we're going to make sure that are identified on the plans so that the contractor knows to be extra cautious in those areas. Some of you may have coal chutes that are no longer used. Those will seal off unless you want to keep them, in which case you should let us know. But otherwise we'll seal them off with a steel plate, and we'll make that watertight, and the sidewalk will go right over the steel plate. The only change in elevation that we have is going to be in front of TD Bank. We're going to raise the sidewalk a little bit there to get a 7-inch reveal on the curb. And the same thing up by the old gas station, north of Walnut Street. This sidewalk is all flush with the road. So we're going to put in a sidewalk up there that'll have a 7-inch reveal on it as well. And the only other change we have is the Merchants Bank parking or entrance. We're talking about narrowing up this curb cut a little bit because it's quite wide and prevents a safety issue for pedestrians crossing it. So here we're going to be working with the town to come up with a solution for that area and hopefully get some more green space in there. And Tim will talk about the trees and green space later. So that's basically it with the sidewalk. It's pretty straightforward. If anyone has any questions? Yes.
You're talking about the beginning of the spring of 2014. I know that's a moving target, but what are you thinking now, when in the spring? Because that's really kind of what merchants get nervous about. Mm-hmm. Is exactly what the process is. If you're saying spring begins May 1st, because that's generally when the weather allows for pavement to dry correctly, what is the time period? And I think that a lot of the concern is some of these sidewalks that are being redone might be in front of the actual walkway into the store. So what are the plans to minimize disruption to the businesses on the east side of Main Street?
Great question. Typically, sidewalk projects tend to start around April 15th. That's going to have to be nailed down with the town. Obviously, we want your input on that and what's going to affect the business owners the least. For getting into your businesses, there's going to be unlimited access to your businesses. There might be some short periods of time where it's going to be a little more difficult, and the contractor may have to provide temporary access with ramps over an unfinished sidewalk. But we'll make sure that you have constant access to your businesses.
I'm really concerned about the accessibility for the wheelchair individuals, because the last time when we did this project, right by the Latches Hotel, I had a wheelchair individual who I was escorting downtown, and there was no way you could get that person through that area with all the pebbles that were underneath. The person sunk right in. We luckily were able to get 2 people to actually help lift her out, and I'm concerned that this same thing will happen again. So can you address that?
Yes. We will have temporary walkways when needed that might take up some parking on the road. So there might be periods of time where some of the parking will be blocked off and used as a temporary walkway. Other times they'll detour to the other side of the road, to the west side, if necessary. So there will be ADA accessible access at all times. Yes.
I'm hoping that you'd be able to figure out a way to make it as undisruptive as possible by doing just a small piece of the sidewalk at a time rather than tearing up the whole of the east side of Main Street. I'm one of the merchants involved here. And over the last few years, we've had all of these horrendous downtown projects that have really affected our business hugely. And a lot of it is just the perception of chaos. I mean, there's a certain amount of chaos anyway, but people just stay away when there are these projects going on, which is really horrendous for us. And I think if you were able to do a little piece at a time, that might help quite a lot.
That's a good comment. We understand that construction is disruptive to businesses, and that is not the intent of the project. So we do want to make it as easy on the business owners as we can. And we'll work with the town to try to build into the contract documents something for phasing or timing and requirements for cleanup, and to make sure that the work area is as clean and orderly as possible at all times.
I'd like to speak to that too. Is one of the things we found with the downtown project is when we had some of our meetings at the select board, and there were some problems. There were some problems with different sections of sidewalk. There was a change in the plans, and that kind of promoted this negative outlook on the project. And I remember after that we did some promotion of the project. Downtown's open, and I think that's important too, is when we get into these, is to promote downtown. Even if there's a construction project, we need to say that there is construction going on, but you have access to downtown. So I think that communication with the media is going to be really important, and with the downtown businesses, it's helpful to get that word out. Now, I don't know, Chrissy, maybe you can answer this. I know that on the Main Street project, they did have a communication or a PR person. I don't know if a block of the funding might be available for this project, if you can support, a person that does that type of activity. And we might be able to use, like, say, VABB, the new person that comes in there, and fund a little bit of that so they could do something with the media, maybe in the papers or such. Do you know if that's could
We
be
haven't
eligible?
seen that happen before. I don't know if it was eligible for funding,
Okay.
but I have seen projects, larger projects, and especially in downtown areas, that has happened.
So we'll make a note of that, because I think that would help, and actually could do a promotion, to come down and have the construction special or whatever, that's something that the business owners may be able to work on.
Yeah,
With help from us for the advertising.
having somebody for public information and public communication really does help. Yes.
I was just wondering, have you been coordinating at all with the Brooks House folks? Because it sounds like now that if it's 2014, there might be some overlap in what's going on with that project and disruption to the downtown with the sidewalk project.
We have not coordinated with them, but I believe Barb was saying, okay, the town has.
Again, I know, in fact, there was a meeting today that the town planners, Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland and Barb Sundag have been actively working with Bob Stevens and his crew. And that's a really good point, because, if these two projects clash at the same time, that could be an issue. It really certainly could. And I don't know if that's going to be something we have to keep an eye on too, is their schedule. I know that they're looking at trying to start earlier, but with funding issues and such, we'll have to see how they, so that's a great point. See how that works.
I just wanted to support the idea of what Steve said about the individual who actually is available to everyone during this project, someone to be accountable, because in one of the projects that we had, the sidewalk project, we had the individual at the River Garden, I believe it was, who had regular meetings, maybe once a week or something like that. But there were a number of issues that happened that were related to tires being popped because of the type of equipment that you use, or gravel or something. But anyway, there were quite a few of them that came to this meeting and mentioned that they needed to have reimbursement, and they really did actually do that, at least in some of the cases that I saw. So that would be valuable, I think.
Okay, we'll certainly work with the town and with Matt and see what can be done about getting somebody for public communication. Any other questions? If there isn't anything else right now, I can pass it over to Tim, and he can talk about the streetscaping concepts. And we can always come back if you have any more questions later.
Thanks, Chrissy. Okay, what I'll do is I'll start at the north end here and sort of describe what the existing provisions are and what we're proposing for the streetscape improvements. what we're looking at, I guess north of the Key Bank, it's really not in urban condition. You have a narrower sidewalk. There are trees sort of on private property, so the scope of our work is starting right at the driveway at Key Bank, where the sidewalk widens out quite a bit. The sidewalk all the way through is anywhere from 10 to 11 feet wide, which offers an opportunity to sort of break up that pavement pattern rather than having it all concrete, having a band of clay pavers 3 feet wide between the curb and the sidewalk. Visually, it would make it more appealing, and in terms of maintenance, they wouldn't be set in concrete. The standard detail is that they're set in a stone dust setting bed, so if there was ever any ideas of replacing street lights or things like that, it would be less of an impact. So I'll talk about trees. You have existing trees. They're all honey locusts, and some are new. The southern end of the project, it appears they were planted not too long ago. You have some nice mature ones. This one right here in front of A Candle in the Night. It's actually doing quite well. So what I'm proposing is another same type of tree on the other end, where the loading zone is, bumping out the curbing to allow more space for these trees to grow. And an important component of this project would be using constructed soil underneath the sidewalks, which allows the trees to grow, allows roots to expand. It's been used in a number of Vermont projects, Berry Streetscapes, Wininski Streetscapes. So it's a very good alternative if you're going to grow street trees, to have them grow in a proper soil medium. So it's this unloading zone here. It's we take up a little bit of it. These are no parking zones currently. It's about, the unloading zone is about 40 feet long. So that's, and then in between would be permeable granite cobbles that will allow water and oxygen to get to the roots. They would be like 4x4, I think your standard 4x4 cobbles that you see like in Burlington and Boston. So, continuing.
Can I speak on that just a little bit?
Sure.
Now, another point on this area right here with this loading zone, there was discussion at one of our meetings that we had, a group meeting, we had Helene Henry from the tree committee, and also the existing trees that are there need to be looked at, because the tree that's existing does go up and goes against the facade of the building, and it's scraping actually. So then the discussion was, what's the lifespan on these trees? There's one question maybe you can answer, and the tree committee is also going to look at it, because there was discussion also over the Brooks house that the large tree in front of the restaurant probably should have been taken down at the time and replaced with a new tree, new growth. But that didn't happen because people wanted to keep the tree. But then if the tree's going to stay, should it be trimmed and such? And the other thing we'll have to look at this situation also is the tolerance is very close for a tractor trailer to come out of High Street and turn. So we'll, these are concepts that we'll continue to look at, but then it may be okay, we say, geez, it looks good for this, but then when we look at the actual turning radius, it may not be allowed, so.
Have you observed actually a tractor trailer truck getting in and out of there? You can barely
That's
do
my
it.
store, and I'm about to tell you this. I'm all for streetscape, I'm all for green. Believe me, I climb trees on a regular basis, but I am a furniture store, and I have larger than 40-foot tractor trailers that come in on a regular basis, and the only way that we can get them in and tight to the curb so that traffic passes is to have them go down to exit 1, come up Main Street, and then we stand on the bulb out, the bump out, that's the other side of the driveway next to the store, opposite the tree. The tree stands on the existing tree.
Right.
Okay, and then you have the bulb out to the left of that.
Yes.
And that bulb out actually is, I don't even think it's a full 7 inches, and then it comes down and it meets it. They have to jump that
Oh, wow.
in order to get the tractor trailer in close enough so that if there's a logging truck or a cement truck or any other delivery truck, fire truck, anything that comes by, it doesn't block Main Street. And they take up what now is everything from the parking place to the driveway. That whole thing is taken up by a tractor trailer. So any lessening, any revisions to that, whether it's a bulb out or making it smaller, is going to mean that we can't get a truck in there. And then the only alternative we have is to send them to exit 3 and have them come down and take a right up High Street and go into that loading zone. But that means that we're carrying, 75-pound, 110-pound sofas, pushing the block signal, waiting for it to happen. So every tractor trailer that comes into that store, and it's not just mine, Mocha Joe's has more tractor trailers that come in than we do. And they don't train their drivers the way we do. They stick out into the road and it causes a problem. So that's my concern. I love the aesthetics, but and of course my concern is the honey locust. The leaves drop on my flat roof building that you can't see, and it's a lot of maintenance. I would love, I wish that they're pretty, they grow fast, they're hardy, but I'm the one who has to maintain for months all the leaves that fall. It's not like a maple leaf falling, and they're insidious, they're terrible. They get into every crack, every crevice.
So that's the only reason I wanted to kind of jump in, is that, we're going to go through your concept, but those type of comments are important so that we can document them, because it's something that people aren't looking at.
Any change, and we've really worked out good. We work with the buses, we work with everybody, it's working beautifully. But any change will prohibit a full tractor trailer from getting in there, because there's actually not enough space right now, as I said. If they don't jump that curb, if we don't stand there and make them go up onto the curb and swing in, then they stick out about 6 feet. They can't get in there. And there's no way for them to swing into traffic and back up. It's just impossible. So it's,
And it may be helpful for us at some point.
You want,
if we could witness,
Monday. Monday I have a truck coming in.
If we could witness that, it'd be good, and then, maybe we could take some pictures of that and then see it live, and it would help us.
Well, I have a truck coming Monday. They usually call us a half an hour before they show up, usually.
We could probably have somebody, respond in that time.
So I'll make a note and just give a call and let you guys know what time.
Now, when we did some of the locations of the other trees, first we started with the concept with the tree committee, and then the tree committee actually went out onto the street, met with the vendors, and listened to different concerns. And we had a case where, the tree looked good here, but it was right in front of where the door would open, in a parking space. So there's all these little things that we got to work out, but we're here tonight to look at the concept and to hear these different, concerns. I think it's important.
I just had it's kind of related but unrelated, but a lot of times when the loading zone is already full up and the bus comes by, it ends up stopping right in the middle of the intersection of Main Street, which is not, I don't know where they should be, but that's a really bad place for them to be. So that's something that kind of comes into the...
Yeah, this across the street, that's probably one of the better bus locations because it sends to work and nobody else is there. This area here is shared by more of, the bank and by the vendors and stuff for delivery, so it becomes awkward at times. And then parking's such a premium, do you take out all the parking and then that doesn't help the bank, so it's difficult because when the bus needs to share these areas, sometimes they can't get in there. Now, are you saying, or they're not just pulling in enough?
No, it's already full.
It's already full,
So they stop at right inside the stoplights.
Or right in
and I've
the lane.
seen them.
Well, because it stops traffic coming from every direction.
Every
You can't
direction,
turn
right.
down the hill, you can't come up Main Street. But
We've also been discussing and looking at possibly putting the bus stop further out.
Well, it was
Yes.
scheduled to be there and then it got changed.
Yeah, we had some
Issues, yeah.
difficulties if whether we wanted to put a shelter there or
Right.
not, so.
Steve, can you also address how this brick would be during the snow plowing and that sort of thing? Does it weather well? Am I understanding, because you're so close to, because you evacuate the downtown area for parking during the winter so you can plow, I'm concerned that maybe this material is not as durable.
It is. It's been used for quite a number of projects in Vermont. We use it in the Proctorsville Sidewalk project. They're clay pavers, so they're extremely hard. They meet all of the ASTM standards, V-Trans standards for heavy equipment. And they're set quite tight, so they do take plowing. They're very durable. So in terms of maintenance, it's very little. So I appreciate your comments. You know, a lot of times when we're designing something here as a concept, you know, and we're in somewhat of a vacuum because we can't talk to everybody, but this is really important so that. You know,
And I'm not
business-
concerned about the pavers, the tree.
Yeah.
You know, the big tree is big enough, we've cut off enough lower branches that it doesn't get, it's not a problem anymore for the big tractor trailers. They've already done their damage and the tree survived. It could be an issue for this new tree coming up in terms of how it's shaped and the maintenance, because I mean, these tractor trailers are tall.
Sure.
On the street light, well, you'll notice, Steve, every time there's a sign that goes on this, on the pole, you know, it ends up getting bent.
We just moved
It's
it
their
down the street.
mirrors or whatever it is. I mean, it's the reality of New England downtowns and deliveries.
Question.
Sure.
Is there going to be any money in the budget to do pruning of that tree?
That is a question that I can't answer. I don't know if Steve, you have any?
Well, we do have a separate budget for some tree maintenance, and we work with the tree board. Again, the tree board, the town does have a tree board that does seek out grants, and also, you could actually speak to it.
Yeah.
But, and you have trim too, right?
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to it?
Well, I can't do that tree.
Right.
I've been doing the other trees on Main Street because I can reach them with a ladder. But that tree is beyond my scope, especially since the size of pieces that would come off
Yeah.
is.
Well, I had to call last year, if you remember.
And we've hired arborists in the past.
I was just wondering
for different
if-
trees,
if,
so.
while you're doing the sidewalk and that kind of stuff, if maybe that tree either should have a good pruning, so it alleviate a little bit more with the truck traffic, or even be removed.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I'm on the tree board, and this could be sacrilegious, but.
The tree by us.
But
The big tree by us.
that tree is already growing over its
Sorry?
sidewalks and curbs and stuff like that. And it might be a good time while you're doing this to plant new trees.
And again, that was brought up, but there has to be some consideration for funding, because if the tree comes out, then it'd be included in the funding to plant a new tree. If it needs to be trimmed, then we're going to have to trim it one way or another. So there will be funding available, because we know it needs it now, and before we go trim that tree, we want some feedback from the tree committee and also this group. Let's do the right thing.
I mean, the tree across the street, those two trees are doing quite well. They're big.
Yep.
I curse them at times and I love
Well, this tree too, the trunk is growing right into the curb.
them. The one that's there.
Yeah, so that's going to be an issue with the curbing and how to deal
Exactly.
with that. And, so that's,
We have a question.
oh yes.
Sorry, I came very late because I had a customer who's not in a position to refuse a customer, so. Yeah, where is, I'm sorry, I'm backtracking, but where's the other tree going? Because I'm right next door to Candle in the Lane.
Key Bank, the new
Oh,
one that
Key
you're
Bank.
proposing
Oh,
to put
okay.
in.
The new tree would be here by Key Bank, yes.
So when I look at that map, that's south and that's
Yes.
north?
Yes, this
Okay,
way is
so get
north.
it back to front.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we just had this discussion, you know, with the tractor trailers pulling in, and
Yeah.
that may be a
I
huge
always think it's
hindrance.
better to trim a tree than cut a tree.
I agree.
You know, there's so many years of growth in there. It's just it makes so much more sense. You know, lobbard it if you have to, like they do in England.
Mhm.
That's what they do. They lobbard. What is it? Lobbarding, isn't it? Yeah. You know, where you cut it all down and then it
Right.
shoots out. You know, so that you don't have the scrambling limbs. But I mean, you know, you can always do that. I think it's always think it's a shame
Yeah, because it
to
is,
get rid of a tree.
right, and it is mature, and it's
Yeah.
in good health, and I think, yeah, you'd be surprised by pruning it, you know, it would probably be okay.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I would
during the
say.
construction process, that's where it's gonna be,
Right.
because there'll be a lot of excavation.
Can I
Sure.
just,
Sure.
sorry, this is an independent question and it's very me-centric, but I'm assuming I'm aiming it at the right people. Right outside my store, you know, I'm now if you were right on the side, I have this monstrosity of a electrical box. Obviously nothing you can do about the traffic signals, but if you are in a position where you are pulling the pavement up, if there was anywhere that could be other than bang, dang in front of my window, it would be so great. Because I always think, you know, people who are coming down the high street, it's right by the wall. You know, I don't know whether there's anywhere else that could
Oh,
go.
right.
I mean, if you had a moment to have a look at it when you're passing down the high street, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just mentioning it, not expecting. But it's really an eyesore, you know. Don't you agree?
I do.
Yeah. It's just, it doesn't have any kind of
Do you know what
reason
that's
for being
for?
there. Yeah. It blocks the view, so I don't know whether it's something that could feasibly be moved.
That would have to be, we'd have to discuss it.
It would be pretty difficult, it'd be fairly difficult for us. We just did the project, it's brand new. There was some research when the state did some work, when they did the original plans to see if we could relocate the electrical boxes somewhere else. Then it becomes tight. It either needs to go on, we'd need a permanent easement from a building owner to put electrical service in. So
You couldn't put it like in the alley on the
we
side
could,
of the
but then we'd have to
building?
take it from we'd have to get a permanent easement from private owners, and that's not so easy. In fact, they did look at that, and I don't think there were very many options down there. Most of the power is fed from the railroad tracks in the downtown area, and normally the panels are very close to where the traffic signals are themselves.
Right. Well, there is I mean, I have no clue, but there is an alleyway
Mm-hmm.
that is right beside my shop. It's really nice too, and you know, I am sure from the perspective of the building owners, which is vast.
No, I own the alley.
Oh, you own the
That's
alley.
my
Oh,
alley.
okay.
I
All right, well
have
then-
agreements with them.
Yeah.
It belongs to
Okay.
me.
All right. So that not. Well, I was just wondering if they could put it on the wall, you know, of the building or something instead.
I don't think it will happen.
No,
I don't,
okay.
and I'm not sure that this project would fund it as part of the project.
Right.
You're talking about the ugly one, right?
I'm talking
There's
about
a
that
million
real
things, but there's
kind
one
of
that's only has-
eyesore. And as you drive down High Street, it kind of almost blocks my entire frontage out. You know, and I remember when I was thinking about renting that space, I was thinking, oh, that place would be really nice if we could get rid of that electrical box. Because it's just not well designed, not well thought out, just sort of.
The other thing that's been
there.
talked about is you know, could there be some benches and planters put in that area too, or some bike racks? There's other uses for that little bulb out there. The bulb out kind of was added to add these panels, and unfortunately the ugliness, but there might be some other amenities that may help in that area.
Right, but I don't think
To
we want
enhance
to
it.
create even more of a block, because
True.
as I said, one of the reasons why I like the location is that it's at the bottom of High Street, you come down, you can see it, do you know what I mean?
I do.
But just from an aesthetic point of view, I think it was a shame to have done that in that place, but that's okay.
Okay.
Just
Well, your
thought I'd
point's
mention
well
it.
taken.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I have a question concerning parking and deliveries and tractor trailers and that sort of thing. Has there been much consideration in the streetscaping and so on with just the general delivery issues that are faced on Main Street with the merchant space?
We haven't discussed it. Well, tonight we just did. I guess there's a big issue here in front of the furniture store.
Right.
But as far as the whole streetscape,
But I think that issue is pretty consistent all the way down Main Street.
okay.
And then where my store is where it drops off, with I'm across from Sam's and Mocha Joe's.
Okay.
Further down.
That's where you're going to be doing anything.
Right. Okay.
And it's a hill. So trucks come up and they park in front of my store to deliver to say fireworks or whoever down that street, including rendering trucks and everything else. And that goes on most mornings for 3 hours or 4 hours or so. And so it strikes me as being pretty inconvenient for them to be on such an incline when they're unloading kegs of beer and everything. And for one, and for two, it's similar to Melvy's issue with the electric box blocking the view of her street. I make jewelry, and I have a rendering truck parked in front of my place, which is kind of, with grease on this street. They're careful, but still. Anyway, but who knows what goes on next? Who knows where I move to? Who knows what's going to happen in the future? And I know that the planning you're doing here is you can't take every individual, but it seems like the issue of deliveries should be addressed, and there's a nice thing to think about of where they can deliver strategically and have central places for them to unload tractor trailers, rendering trucks, and so on.
Can I speak to that? Just briefly, the existing loading zones were developed through the parking committee, and I was involved with it also, and we went to merchants and we tried to identify areas. And it's a pretty big struggle. If you start at the bottom of Main Street, there's a pretty good area on Flat Street that could be parking but is a loading zone. And as we came up Main Street Hill, there was a need for stores and restaurants and everybody else in that area to get deliveries, and that's why that's not the best loading zone, although I think it probably is because it's almost always full, the one on Main Street Hill. And as we go up through, on Elliott Street by the Hotel Pharmacy, and the one on High Street was critical. There was discussion about taking that away, and we've accommodated that and painted it out. Also, the one, the Candle of the Night, we've just gone round and round with that one.
Yeah.
So there's a need, and it's a delicate balance. I mean, it's different in today's world because large tractor trailers deliver goods that may just be a few boxes, where years ago you had smaller deliveries. They'll fill one truck up and come up to New England and make several drops. So it's a challenge, I know, for the merchants, and it's a challenge for the town to try to find areas that you can balance it. And I know that there's some areas that are bagged off for certain time periods to help for loading zones. But I guess it's something that, that's another thing. It's good to get the feedback from the merchants. This is news to me about these deliveries by the Candle in the Night and that loading zone. So the more feedback we get on information like that, the more maybe the loading zones downtown need to be adjusted again.
Well, the one on the hill there, there's the left turn lane. So fortunately, when a larger truck comes in, like a Cisco truck or something, they don't fit the same issue with Candle in the Night. They don't fit in there, so they're out in the through lane, but people can get around them because there's a left turn lane.
Yeah.
But they're unloading goods in the travel lane. They have their ramp going right out the back of the truck.
Okay.
So that's, you know, so one spot and then blocking the access to the driveway behind the, for the parking behind the buildings is, you know, it's this really interesting chess game sometimes.
Well, we'll make a note of the loading zones. I think it's a good point.
Okay, well, I'll just continue on down the street. So we're getting here to the bulb out in front of the Waypoint Center. As I'm sure you all know, it's filled up with a lot of control boxes. It's not real pretty in terms of, you know, you got the traffic lights there, street lights, control boxes, and there's really not a whole lot in terms of moving those, because they're there, I guess they have to be there. So how do we treat that? What I'm proposing is, first we have a bike rack, a 5-bike bike rack located here in front of the bicycle shop. And then we have a bench sort of in the middle here with planters on either side. And I'm proposing showing planters on either side of the walkways, street crossing walkways. And my idea about those would be, rather than keeping them very simple, steel structures, either square or round, they can be built by local artisans. But basically, visually, keeping them simple, even if they have like a rusty surface. And then I guess there would have to be some sort of garden club or to maintain. So at least when you're walking, your eye is sort of pulled to these planters, and they would be different sizes rather than to the, you know, everything else going on. If the planters were, you know, too complicated, or I guess, I don't know, too contrived, I don't think it would work. You know, they need to be sort of industrial, artisan.
You could make them out of cement. Yeah, cement planters are really nice.
Lightweight cement, you know, they probably want to be movable if,
Yeah,
That's right. That's
Yeah.
what I was
For the
gonna
bar,
comment.
yeah.
right.
But they sort of blend with the pavement.
Mm-hmm.
One comment about the benches. There used to be benches outside of what you're calling the Waypoint Center, which is the river garden. And they were removed because all it did was give the homeless people a place to sit and drink their brown bag alcohol every day, and
Now they
hang
sit
out.
on my bench instead.
They sit on your bench. You know, I don't want to appear judgmental in any way. It's just the reality of what that creates. And I know that I've done enough, although I haven't been involved in many years, in downtown planning situations, and also a lot of times how do the benches face? You know, should they face in so that when the people want to sit on the benches, they're looking in at the merchandise in the stores, or should they be facing out
Right.
and watching the cars go by? I mean, that's a discussion that takes place in downtown urban planning all the time. But I just want to let you know that the benches that used to be there were removed. And it was because it also became just a place where the trash collected.
Mm-hmm.
And it became such an eyesore that the decision was made to get rid of the benches, and now everyone sits across at Plenty Park and not at that intersection. So, whatever it's
I got a comment on that, because at the little park on Church, up from the fire department,
Yeah.
we had one of the local stonemasons. He did the little park there, and he did some stone benches. And that's used all the time, but people don't do it long term.
'Cause it's not.
And so there's a certain need. If you go to a downtown, there's some people, they want to rest their legs.
Sure.
So maybe that's a consideration, instead of the comfortable bench. When we did the pathway, What's Known Pathway, you'll notice that some of the benches don't have a back on them. It's enough so that you could use it looking towards the river if you wanted, or look towards the parking lot or the traffic. So there are some different treatments that you could use, or I've seen in other areas where they may have just a cement around circle.
Right.
It's not something for the long term, but it's enough to rest your legs. You know, there's some people that just want to sit down. And, you know, you can go in the store and sit here, type of scenario. So maybe that could be.
I'm not against it, I'm just pointing out that the
Yep.
benches were removed for a reason.
Well, you could do
benches and planters that were, you know, built together.
Yes.
With like stone or cement benches, and you could have the cement, the bench, and the planter that would be one and the same, you know, thing made out of concrete, but not too comfy, you know.
Right, and it would be nice to have plants nearby.
Well, I said you could sort of incorporate them. I've seen it done, you know, where they're sort of incorporated together.
Right. Well, I think there is an opportunity right in this area where I'm showing the bench now with planters on either side. I mean, that could be something like you're talking about, or incorporated into the planters, absolutely. Okay, so continuing on down to the historic clock. The idea here is to sort of give a little more prominence to it, to protect it. Again, bumping out, this is a no parking zone here, so we would be taking part of the street, going out 6 feet. In this red area, you can see here where it goes out. The clock is right there. There would be like a granite marker describing the history of it. It would serve as to protect it, and also as an information piece. And then on either side of the clock, having granite bollards or granite posts to protect it. Again, I'm not sure how people feel about the unloading. I mean, we are. Okay.
Well, my shop is just a few doors down from there, and when I get tractor trailers in, which I do with outdoor furniture and palletized concrete, huge amounts of very heavy stuff, I pay $15 a day for so it's $45 for 3 parking places to accommodate a truck. And if it wasn't for the space there that is where the fire hydrant is, for them to actually back in, I would then have to buy yet another, a 4th thing, which would, it's already costing me $45, which is a lot of, on top of shipping and everything else. So that could be problematic to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure where that's bumping out there exactly, but
It's where it's marked no parking for the fire hydrant. That's why it wasn't going to affect parking as such.
okay, so it will affect me then. It will affect the truck's not going to be able to
Well,
pull forward and then pull right back in there.
well, I mean, if the truck was parked right here, a few feet back, it could certainly still pull out. I mean, we're talking 6 feet. I mean, it could be bumped in a little more. I mean, the thought was to sort of, give some prominence to that clock. And
Well, I already have a huge problem with the tractor trailers. I get really big ones come in.
okay.
And it's quite challenging as it is,
Mm-hmm.
just so you know.
Okay.
Are there truck-friendly ramps that can be used in terms of having that 6-inch granite curb as a formal bulb out, something where it's a little less and the truck can easily get on and off the...
Well, they have sloped granite curbing. It's usually at 45 degrees. I mean, that's a possibility. We could bump this in a little more. Maybe not go out 6 feet, maybe go out 3 feet. At that point, the truck would be getting very close to the clock anyway. They probably wouldn't want to be there. So, I mean, that definitely could happen.
But like around the roundabout at exit 3, there's the oval, there's the lower reveal of the curb.
Right.
So that on the inside lane, the tractor trailers are supposed to take it and have half of their truck come up on that, so that they don't take up the whole roundabout. They take up half the roundabout as they're going in. So it's designed for use for a tractor trailer to get up on, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it could actually still be red and whatever else is designed or proposed.
Yeah, I mean, this could be flush with the pavement. It could be granite, so that, Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility, so that it could still be driven over, but it still draws attention to the,
Yeah, well, it's definitely helping out.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to the tractor trailer parking needs as well, but the town I grew up in had a historic clock that one morning the newspaper delivery truck slid on some ice and took it out, and of course, I mean, so it completely shattered. And it was really sad because that was a real feature of downtown in its own way. And so there is a need to protect it, but it's not that we have ice here.
No.
Or a hill
I
with
don't
trucks on it down.
think the clock's ever been a concern for my tractor trailers, though. I don't think it's ever been a dangerous thing for it. Because it's not sticking out.
Right.
It's on the street.
Yeah, so I think that kind of is a non-issue really.
It's when someone's lost control of their vehicle.
Well, we put a big bollard there. You'll notice there's a big piece of steel pipe because it did get hit.
Oh,
So during this project, we're just thinking, can we, versus this steel pipe, and we did put a ring on it, so it looks like a hitching post.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, and it looks pretty good. It's been there for years. When we had a discussion, we talked about maybe it'd look nicer to have a nice big piece of granite or something with the history of the clock. Where did it come from? And so that may be separate from the bulb out. So the discussion was all about let's try to protect the clock somehow when we do this project. And if maybe the way it is fine, but maybe we can do something better.
Well, you know, in terms of what I was talking about with my tree, and that, or the second tree that you're planting and going out the 6 feet, maybe this is just the discussion is that these two things somehow maybe don't go out as far and that they are sloped so that these trucks can still access what they need to access. And, well, you know, maybe, Steve, when the truck comes, you can just jump, depends on where that is, but if the truck can literally come up onto it a little bit,
Yeah.
it's not an issue.
Right.
Because it's the front of the cab at that point, I think. As long as the trucks can kind of go up and then come down, it may not be an issue. So maybe it's 3.5 feet instead of 6 feet and it's sloped and the trucks can deal with it.
And with these granite cobbles, I mean, you can really fine tune your grade so you can get some nice slopes. And it's kind of a nice look. It's more organic than, you know, a straight curve. But, do you have a question?
Well, I'm just thinking a lot of the reason, to some degree, the reason for that is for the tree. And so in reality, it's like surface treatment that would be the biggest improvement for the tree. If it's some kind of impermeable surface, and it may not have to go out. Isn't that somewhat?
That's a possibility.
So maybe you don't really need a bump out, you just need a circular change in surface texture.
Right.
Right there, something that can, in this case, it would be plowed. Because the plows would go there. It would give the trees some water and a little more room and, you know, not buckling concrete or asphalt or something.
Right.
Are those red areas that we, for the cobbles, are those permeable? Does water go through them?
They could be. These are clay pavers. They have two types. They could be permeable. One thing I'm not certain of is the durability, because they do have gaps in them to allow water through. I mean, it's a great idea.
How big are the openings for the trees?
There would be like 24-inch by 24-inch square openings with bark mulch. And then on the side of that, well, they're different for each tree, but well, this is a typical detail. It would be from the center of the tree, 3 feet on either side, so it would be a 6-foot area by 3 foot of granite cobbles that would be permeable. So that as the tree grew, you know, you could pull the cobbles out too.
This 2-foot square is not a whole lot of area to get water, or?
Well, the idea is that the water goes into the granite cobbles as well. So it's just, rather than bringing the cobbles right up to the tree, you know, relieving, you know, the space. I mean, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of different methods. tree grades or, they cause problems as well. And I know a lot of cities now are just going back to just a square with bark mulch, tree guards. They're a good idea as well. But, and also with the constructed soil, that's going to allow a lot more water to go underneath the sidewalks and oxygen, and hopefully these trees will do better.
Mm-hmm. How does the water get to that constructed soil though, if you have a 2-foot square?
It goes through the cobbles, that's a 6 feet on either side. And if...
So the cobbles are placed in dirt?
They would be placed on gravel and then like a permeable stone dust grit.
Yeah.
And they would be, maybe 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch gaps in between.
And they'll be on either side of each of the trees?
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
Great.
So the freeze thaw doesn't affect that makeup where the water is frozen during the winter time?
Well, as long as it's with this constructed soil, it does. There is a lot of pore space, so the water does go through. So, and there hasn't been any issues. It's all in the subgrade preparation. If you have a good subgrade and brick pavers that are not set in concrete, they will last longer than concrete actually. Because when concrete cracks, the whole thing goes. Yeah.
Are there any other trees besides honey locust that you've
Oh yes, what I'm proposing for down here is replacing, or not replacing, but adding trees with little leaf linden, which is it's a very durable street tree. They get about 45, 50 feet in height, 30, 35 foot spread. Again, very durable, disease resistant. They can be pruned easily. They're used a lot in this application. They have nice flower, yellow flowering in July. So basically going down, we would be adding trees, or these are the existing trees, keeping those. One of these, we'll look at the trees a little more closely, but some of them, the ones that were newly planted, some of them are not in that great a shape. They have a lot of bark damage. Yeah, so I mean, it might be a good opportunity to put new trees in. And I would recommend smaller rather than larger so they can adapt to their situation, rather than putting in big street trees. When I mean small, not this big, maybe 12 to 15 foot height. The trunk might be 2.5, 3 inch diameter, similar to what was planted before. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that I'm delighted that you're putting more trees on High Street. I think it's just really a great idea because it just changes the whole feel of somewhere.
Oh, absolutely.
Trees, yeah. And I have a really probably very stupid question, but do the tree roots, do they have access to go out and under? Are they going into dirt or are they contained?
No, they with this constructed soil, they actually go underneath the sidewalk.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
And
that's what I thought. So they're going to grab water from other places too.
Right, and if there are sometimes what they'll do on sidewalks, they'll if there's like a green space on the other side of the sidewalk, but there's a tree between the sidewalk and the road, they'll actually put this constructed soil in it so the roots can travel underneath the sidewalk into a green space. You don't have a lot of that situation here, but certainly underneath the sidewalk, I mean, you could go with the constructed soil all the way up, depending on the foundations, you could go up to the foundations. And ideally, you would want 3 feet of this constructed soil. That's an ideal situation. 2 foot is a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely is an investment. But if you want your street trees to thrive, it's a good investment.
Yeah, I think it's a investment. I think it really makes a huge difference to the sort of atmosphere in a downtown.
Right. So going further south, this bump out here is somewhat on a slope, so I don't think it would be really conducive to any benches. Again, planters, putting in a new tree here. But again, we can, as you know, just as we discussed, we were taking a little bit of this no parking zone, but we can do that with cobbles so that we don't have to have the curbing, or the curbing would be flush with the pavement. That's how you treat that. Because you wouldn't want to stop your curbing and then just have the granite cobbles. You'd want to continue the granite curbing and then have those cobbles on the inside, but the curbing would slope down to the level of the pavement. And so this is, I have some details here, sort of showing a typical section here, showing this is the brick band that's 3 foot 2 inches, and then the rest of the sidewalk, which could have a nice scoring pattern. And then the cutout for the trees, and then the cobblestones on either side. And then the scope of work for the planting pretty much ends here, because this is where the sidewalk gets really narrow, and I don't really think there's any opportunity.
And
But-
where is that exactly? At that end part?
It would be, yeah, distinctive, turn it up, distinctive decor.
Oh,
And what would be helpful for me is if, you folks gave me some input on where you would like, more trees, maybe move some if we can. Some of it is dependent on underground utilities, but, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I've heard from High Street down. What about from High Street up towards this way of town?
Going north, we're starting the project here. What I was saying was, as you go north, you get into a less urbanized situation. The town doesn't, the sidewalk gets narrow, and there are plantings on private property. There's the hedge, and up by the church, there's some large street trees.
Well, I'm right across the street, so there's a bunch of sidewalk there that needs to be fixed. You could put some trees there, but nobody's come to us and asked us.
On the other side, on this side?
Right across the street, Subway.
No, Subway's on the same side.
Same
But
side, right?
Subway is further up,
That's
it's
the-
beyond
okay.
Savings and Walnut, it's up to Walnut.
Right on the
You're
corner
right,
of Walnut.
right
It's
past
Walnut.
the, past
Oh,
the
right, right.
library.
But nobody's come to us, asked us if we might like some green trees out there to make it look pretty.
Are you talking in front of the subway?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. It's a little tight, but if that's,
But nobody's come to us.
Well,
The
this is-
sidewalks there.
That's what this
damaged.
is, that's what this meeting
Yeah, this
is
is
about,
our
is to
first
find
meeting.
out what you need, listen to what they have proposed, and then they
Yeah,
can
but what I'm
make
also
changes.
saying is nobody's even looked at the sidewalks, nobody's come into the building and asked if our basement is underneath the street, because we have a full basement.
They might
So
At
it's
the-
like we got ignored out of the whole situation, if you know what I'm saying.
Actually, we had a meeting with the town officials, and we did discuss the subway location, and I know that we asked them to get a list of the interested parties in that area.
My owners never heard anything of it until they got this
Well,
letter.
we haven't gotten there yet. But one of the ideas at Subway is, I know that there's a lot of pavement in front of the building here. And we had discussed whether it was possible to eliminate that pavement and put in some green space. I noticed that you have some tables out there,
Yep,
so I wasn't sure if you wanted green space or not.
yeah, we do, we like more natural look.
Okay. That's certainly something we can look at, and removing this pavement, putting in some green space, possibly a walkway to the door. It's something that we had discussed. So we would like to meet and possibly get together and talk about that whole area, as well as the driveway over here. that's not really a driveway. But I know we
There's a
had.
triangular piece of asphalt
Yes.
at the south corner of that building that could use a little something for different treatment.
Yes. We have looked at that area as well for turning that into green space.
No, I'm glad you came to the meeting, and this is really early on in the process. And in fact, we just was it this week or last week that we were looking at the property owner. And we
2 days ago, I think 3 days ago, we're going to see who the actual owner is. Which,
so we determined who that was. And
Kathy owns the building,
Right.
but my owners who rent that spot heard nothing about it.
well, and that's why we went out door to door with these. Did you get a notice like for this meeting?
Yeah,
Okay, and that's why we took the extra step. Hannah actually walked downtown, and because we know there's a disconnect sometimes from the business owner or the owner of the building to the person that's running the business.
right.
So we took an extra effort to hand deliver to each store, and Hannah got an awful lot of feedback going door to door. There's some people weren't able to make this meeting that actually gave us feedback too. So it's an ongoing process. We're here to hear the concerns. Yours was discussed because we could see there's tables out there, there's potential. Sidewalks really wide there. So there is potential to make some improvements, so.
One other thing, sorry. With your basement, we didn't look at the basements of the buildings north of High Street because they're not directly adjacent to the sidewalk like the ones south of High Street are. Do you have a question about your basement being under the sidewalk?
I don't know if it is or isn't, to be honest with you. But I heard you say something about basements being under a sidewalk, and I was like, I don't know if it's under it or not, to be
I
honest.
know that was typically, where the buildings are adjacent to the sidewalk, it was typically because of the coal chutes and stairways down to the building.
And those buildings are an add-on to that Victorian house, which is set back. So even though there's a basement, it wouldn't be underneath those retail spaces, so maybe that's why. You know what I mean? It's like that bank of buildings where where the subway is located. I don't know when it happened, but it probably happened after 1950, 60, somewhere in there.
It's actually later than that.
Later than that, yeah.
Late
Because it was
60s.
the main Victorian house, yeah. So chances are there's nothing like my building, the old town hall.
Right.
From, and that's when it typically happened.
Yeah, so it's probably unlikely that your basement would be under the sidewalk.
Cool.
But we'll certainly look at green space options up there.
And street trees.
Because there's a beautiful, you have the island right there that's maintained
Right.
and is quite nice, but then there's nothing on their side.
That would be a nice spot for an American home, that island.
I can speak to that. There's been issues about visibility at that intersection, having a vertical tree there.
Yeah.
That's why all that shrubbery is essentially below eyesight. But it'd be nice to have a couple of trees at that intersection, if not in that island.
Yeah, I mean, they do have high branching, so, instead of this.
Well, I just had I don't know whether anybody else has had this experience, but I've only had this happen once, but somebody was walking their dog in Brattleboro and decided to use the side of my building to have the dog pee. And I'm just, is there anywhere in town, where people...
Lark Park?
Well, is there any, is there any, for 6 years a little bit of grass. Is there anywhere where, anyway, I told him off.
Where they go is down the driveway, between nice store and fireworks, and there's a parking lot back there, and they use that as...
But, while you're doing this, it sort of feels to me like, because people do have those, and dogs do like to mark their trail, and it seems to me like, if you've had a couple of grass verges there, if I'm taking my dog out for a walk in a public area, I do not let them pee on the side of a building. I will wait until they've I've led them into a flower bed or something like that, do you know what I mean? So it was just, I don't know if anybody else has thought about this, but your husband checked into it and found out that there was no ordinance to say that you were not allowed to let your dog pee on somebody's building.
You have to clean up. There is a...
I threw a bucket of water over it, right in front of him. But I don't know what people do in those instances. I guess they just...
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty
Tree?
urban, I guess it'd be
Central
a
Congregational Church.
It's,
Yeah.
or they just have to, wait till they get up this way.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is pretty much unrelated, but I just wonder if anyone, you're a landscaper and you're used to looking at urban settings, has there been any consideration to what that in front of the Congregational Church, that hedge there, whether there's any thought about asking them to remove that hedge, to open the green space more onto Main Street, and whether they'd be open to it, or perhaps a landscaping rearrangement where the hedge does something else that's really quite nice looking, but brings it, rather than saying this is off limits, because they don't shovel their walk as it is half the time. It's an issue for all of us at that end of Main Street, and I think it's maybe a monetary issue for them in terms of having it done. But I do wonder if they would be open to a re-landscaping. The money may not be there in the scope of this project. I don't know that. But it's certainly, if they were approached, it may be a way to widen the sidewalk and to, they might be open to it. I don't know. I don't know if you ask them.
I think it's a nice idea to push the hedge back and then maybe introduce some more street trees
and some more stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, but they may be open to it. And I just wondered if there was any.
Land, right?
It is their land, but I mean, they're a church. They're part of downtown. They, I think it all comes down to the dollar factor and whether it is within the scope to do it, or whether there is another possibility of a grant down the road that takes it into account, but maybe the planning and visioning would be included in the scope of this project. So I just throw that out there.
We'll put it down to no.
I'm concerned about the functionality of the future for this particular walkway, because we have a fair amount of people who do use, wheelchairs or wheel cars, whatever they're called. They can't get into stores now. I have one friend in particular who was paid $700 to go testify. Well, he wasn't paid $700. It cost $700 for him to go up to Montpelier with his cart to testify about how inaccessible it is right now. And I'm wondering, if you're including this, how are you going to improve that for the residents that are already here? Because I'm concerned. We haven't addressed it before. It is a concern, as especially I'm getting older, and all of us are getting older in the population. How is that going to be addressed?
One thing we were looking at was some of the buildings have steps.
Yeah.
And looking at maybe putting in ramps.
Yeah.
The ones that we have looked at so far, it would not meet the ADA requirements for the slope. It would be too steep.
Too steep,
Yeah. And that's what we were afraid of. And that's, that's with the building, with the recessed doors, and they have to step up and walk way into the building. There's just not enough space. So without them actually moving, their door back further, it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, so my friend says, I have money, I can't get into your store, I can't spend it. I actually have a friend, I want to tell you this, lived here 15 years, never had been downtown. Never, ever had been downtown. Now that's a shopper who shops other places because parking is an issue, and she's 65 years old. This is the first year she ever came downtown. So, if you're going to improve, keep in mind that there are people that just don't come downtown for that reason. So let's make the improvements so that they are able to see that they can physically get there.
How would you, but I mean, I don't quite understand what the problem is. Is it, because it's not the case, I don't think, where I am, but what you're saying is the pavement is below the doorway in a lot of...
Like there's a little step up.
Yeah, they can't walk. So
right. No, I understand that, but I was trying to visualize how the pavement is in relationship to the entryways. So you're saying, because it's not the case in my shop, but in a lot of the other shops, you have to take a step up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only way to get around that would be to move the curb further away from the building.
Well, not the
Well,
curb, because we
because the
can't
ramp would
extend the
skip.
ramp out into the sidewalk either, it would become a trip hazard. So
You'd have to raise
the
the
only way to
pavement.
do it would be to move the door back in the building, which is not going to
Or
be
to raise the
likely.
pavement, which presumably would be
Well,
ridiculous.
raising the sidewalk up creates a problem where, with the parking along the side of the road, you won't be able to open your door anymore.
You said it's
And
just
all the places that you can have video, you would have.
Yeah, the side slope would be
You
pretty
know,
steep.
strip malls, the functionality of strip malls, there's a lot of reasons that strip malls became popular, not just because of laziness. There are a lot of issues in old downtowns that, that are insurmountable.
Accessibility.
Yes.
Well, I think one of the things in Brattleboro is the Chambers thing is only the one and only. And maybe we just have to think about what the town's about and what it is. And it's got, if you are in a wheelchair and you're up on High Street coming down that hill, I would imagine would be a little bit of,
Scary.
And then if you do get to Main Street to go down to, say, the Co-op, down the slope in front of Sam's would be another issue. So, well, we have hills. And maybe we should say, well, how are we going to work with this? And then, it actually adds a lot of the
You
charm
just have
to
a
the town because
volunteer crew to lift people in.
Well, you can actually get from Elliott Street to the Co-op by using the Transportation Center elevators, so you don't have to do.
Oh, yeah. Well, but it's a small New England town.
We certainly are looking, though, at those entrances and trying to improve ADA accessibility wherever possible.
One more tiny question, and that is, and I'm sure Steve is way ahead of me on this, is that when, the plows do come through, they stay in the streets, but all the snow goes up onto the sidewalk, right on top of your 3.5-foot pavers. And then, whenever they can get to it, they have the plows that scrape it back into the roads so that the blower can blow it into the trucks. I'm assuming that you have that situation elsewhere and it doesn't dig up these pavers.
No.
And, okay.
Not at all, no.
It's still, we have concerns, and we discussed even Gary King, the ends on the bulb out by the hydrant.
Right.
It becomes a maintenance situation, anytime you have anything sticking out, we have some by the high school, and we've damaged a lot of equipment. The granite, you can't see these things when it's snowing, and then
Right.
the world now, it's you can't go real slow and look for all these items, we don't have the manpower at the time, so. We asked that question of the neighbors too, because we're gonna be the ones, the thing, when we damage things, we're the ones that have to go back and fix it too. We don't enjoy that either. So, and the trees were also brought up, the trees that, one of our concerns is the new trees that we planted. Now, it may be when the grader comes down the street, it picks up some large chunks of ice and pushes against the tree. Okay, it may not necessarily be the piece of equipment, it's the ice buildup in the snow. So one of the things we're wondering is if there can be some type of guards put around these so that, you don't plant a tree, spend money, and then go and destroy it the next year. So thank you, because we share the same concerns.
Yeah, you definitely could have tree guards, there's all different styles and, they're flexible so they can be widened as the tree grows, but actually, as the tree really matures, they're not as necessary.
So how is this going to affect all the parking meters? No effect
No,
whatsoever?
we didn't take any parking spaces away.
But
So-
the meters itself, they don't have to be repositioned or removed or any way, right? Or-
Not from
No.
the streetscape improvements, I don't know.
Well, they'll most likely be reset, but
Yeah.
she'll be in the same spot.
In fact, when we did the, on the Brook side of the street, we actually measured everything out, and all the changes over all the years, we gained a spot. So we found that, one spot was 18, one was 22, and so when we were doing the sidewalk over, and it was just because loading zones had changed and a hydrant, these different things, and we ended up adding a spot. So, I think we'll look at that. There's another little space down by Woody's across from Elliott Street that, there's a little spot there. We don't know if there's something to do so a motorcycle could park there or something. So, kind of looking at all these different options.
Are you thinking maybe bike racks down there too?
Yes, we were thinking 2 islands at minimum, but then there's other places because people do use the parking meters. And it'd be nice to give them an option so
That's
that
what use the trees.
yeah, you use the trees and you try to get out of the car and there's a bike there, so.
Are
But
there
people,
places between like parking meters, like right now, there's like spots in between that you could put like a bike rack?
and that's what we're gonna look at.
Oh, okay.
It's like where can you fit in, where can there be a spot for a bike rack? And do you have a bench or do you have a place that someone can just rest that won't, occupy full time?
Well, I'm going to suggest a privet hedge around the electrical box. A privet hedge. I don't know whether you call it a privet hedge, but it's a...
I was thinking of a mural that makes it look like your store.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Some of the,
trompe l'oeil.
Well, I think it's something for us to tackle, because both down by Woody and up by Penelope, and they're really ugly. I mean, they're just eyesores.
There has to be, I just can't believe that there isn't a more sensitive urban alternative to
A lot
that.
of us put the underground.
Underground,
But I
underground.
don't know about the,
As long as you're not doing it
the
into
casement
somebody's...
and then put it underground.
Or even putting it lower so that, you could like build, have a doorway to it, but just, it's like,
Yep.
right up there.
We are showing another bike rack down here for the other bike shop. I guess they could go other places as well. They're surface mount, so they can be added later.
So I was thinking about the design of the bike
Yes.
racks. The ribbon racks or some other design?
They could be the ribbon rack.
So I hate the ribbon racks.
Yeah.
They're really bad on bikes.
Oh, okay.
Really securely, like, your bike like slides down, and you need like
Yeah.
2 points to attach your
Oh,
bike.
sure.
Like if you had a U and attached it, then it's much more secure. So
Okay.
it could be like a decorative bike rack.
Right. Well, I've seen the one that looks like a bicycle.
Yeah, those are not
Okay.
so,
What about
just sorry
if
for
you-
that.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, just so I
Yeah.
have that comment on the bike rack, what type of rack?
Well, the ribbon racks like that are in front of the rec center, those are bad.
Okay.
But if you had like a U-shaped one, where you could like have 2 points that the bicycle attaches to, then it's just better for the bikes.
Oh, let's see. I didn't bring one with me, but let me just.
So are there any other comments on the project overall?
Well, just to clarify, so the treescaping is going to end basically Elliott Street there because the sidewalk is too narrow further down.
Yes. Is this the one you're talking about?
Yeah, those are
Those are okay.
the bad ones.
The bad ones?
Yes,
Those are the bad ones.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, this is probably not in your area, but I was going to say, if you are going to be putting nice bike racks in, I know that we have proposed this in other meetings, but has anybody thought about doing the bikes where you can put
The money in.
put the
and
money,
take the
a
bike
credit
from-
card in? Because it would be such a neat thing for Bradley to have, where you could, particularly because you have the train station, so people are coming up from, other parts of the states, and to be able to go and put your credit card in and take a bike and go biking with a credit card is such a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
So I just was thinking, if you were
Yeah,
having these bike racks, you could maybe have, some bikes that were for hire, for rent. They have a system in London where you put it in and it just charges your credit card, and then you can drive to another town.
You can go wherever and put it back and you
just put it
swipe
back,
your
just
card
like
again.
you do with shopping carts. Do you know what I mean? And they know who you are because you've used your credit card, you know what I mean? So
Right.
they can't get, it's difficult for them to get stolen. Anyway, just an idea.
That's a good idea.
Good.
Yeah, I'm all done. Anybody has any more questions?
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. I did a lot of your comments. And then we'll compile all this, and I'm sure we'll have more meetings, right? There'll be more, at least we'll send out some kind of what decisions are made on the questions that are asked and those type of things. But I would think